So I asked you to come on here and chat with me today because, well, a couple of reasons. First of all, you're going to be teaching a session in Fruition in December, and I wanted people to hear from you, to hear like how brilliant you are and have a little bit of an intro to your work. And
Yay.
there's a reason you're teaching a workshop in Fruition in December and why I want you on here. And it is because your work is incredibly important, so relevant to people who work for themselves. I've been talking a lot about how burnt out I think we all are, like collectively. I don't think this is new, but I will say that like something about September and October of this year, I feel like everyone that I talk to is like, I'm like, how are you? And they're like, I'm alive. Like that, I keep getting that response. I keep hearing people ask the question, like, how do we balance all of this? How are we supposed to keep showing up to our work and keep running a business when we're also trying to like live normal life, quote unquote, normal life, and like take care of our families and our households and all of that. And also, we are at a really low starting point because we're now how many years into like, surviving a pandemic. And then everything else that's going on in the world and how absolutely devastating the news is regularly. I mean, to the point that like horrific shit is just starting to blend in and become white noise. And I think I keep hearing people ask this question, how do I balance all this, from the perspective of how do you keep yourself organized? Like how do you keep yourself organized?
Because you can
like,
organize your way out of this.
Exactly. How do you keep yourself organized? How do you set up your Asana? Will you show me specifically what your task management system is? How do you stay motivated? Maybe if I start drinking mushroom coffee instead of regular coffee, I'll suddenly I'll be able to optimize my physiology in a way that will maybe I'm just tired because my body's broken. Maybe I'm tired because I need to go on a detox. You know what I mean? Like, this is the perspective that so many people are looking at this from. And when you and I talk about your work often, as we often do, it's almost funny. Like, I almost can't help but laugh to just be like, oh, no, maybe it's like actually just like you need to remember to take care of your basic needs.
Mm-hmm. All of that.
And so I wanted to have a real conversation about it today. I saw you post something on Instagram the other day that was tips for like digesting our current world. And I was like, you know what? Let's follow that through line and talk a bit about like, as people who work for ourselves who are this fried, it's like, what are some of the really basic things that we can remember to do that can maybe make this, at least we don't feel like are physiologically shutting down at the same time, physiologically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. And two things that you just said stood out to me, and I was writing notes so that I didn't forget, because part of the way I am kind of coping and managing is with a brain that just kind of has a thought and then it leaves. So if I don't write it down, it's probably not going to be said. So two things. First of all, we need to recognize that for those of us who since I was raised in America, I can only comment on American culture.
Yeah.
And what I know about American culture is that the information we are fed from a very young age is so tightly and deeply woven almost within the fabric of us, of our being, that we revert back to that.
Oh, yeah.
Often. Mm-hmm. And so what you named of people saying like, how can I stay organized? How can I be more efficient? How can I increase my productivity? Because literally the world is falling apart. The world is on fire, including the literal world and also, humanity. And there's so much happening. And so many of us in American culture revert back to, well, if we're just more efficient, and if we are just more organized and we just do a better job, this will suck a little less.
Yeah. I mean, I
And
see
so,
people being like, I feel so not motivated and I feel so tired and I feel so pessimistic and I feel so hopeless. And clearly that's because I'm just not organized enough and my mindset isn't right.
yes. Please, everybody who's listening, please know that any time it seems like we're judging, it's not. We are not judging you. We're not calling you out, right? Because
Oh,
I
yeah.
can say for myself, most of the things I'm pointing out are things I do as well.
Oh, I'm
And I'm
happy to
sure
give
you'll probably
examples.
say the same thing, right?
Oh, yes.
And so I think that it is so important. The reason I say this is not because it's like a duh moment, but it's like I think we are past the point. We as Americans, especially, and I say this not to exclude anybody, but I can only again like talk about American culture
Mhm.
and those of us who were raised in it, because that for me is so salient
Mhm.
as somebody who was raised in American culture.
Mhm.
And we are hell bent on success.
Mhm.
And that still plays in when we are dealing with unprecedented times and continue to deal with and navigate through unprecedented times. And
Mhm.
so somehow we as for anybody who is recognizing that something is off, that they are not experiencing life the way that they normally, quote unquote, normally do. And I find myself questioning myself too, like, what is going on with you? It's to the point now where we are past the point of being able to carry so much in the imaginary backpack that we carry around with all of our lived experiences and whatever hardship or trauma or anything else that we are carrying around with us. We can't carry it all. And
Mhm.
some of it needs to get put down
Mhm.
and like placed down, whether we choose to pick it back up or not.
Mhm.
That isn't on an individual basis. But
Mhm.
that brings me to that point about balance,
Mhm.
because I think for those of us who grew up in the 90s, we, there you may have seen, that cartoon where or possibly like a clown or like a circus act where there is this person who has somehow juggling multiple balls or plates or has
Uh-huh.
the plate spinning on the stick,
Yeah.
right? And you've got to somehow keep everything spinning all at the same time, everything up in the air. And that to us, at least for me in my 90s brain, that's what I view as balance. Or some people view like a scale or, multiple scales where everything is just evenly balanced. And
Mhm.
that's honestly, yes, that might be what balance is theoretically, but
Mhm.
that's not how it plays out in life.
No.
And we are at the point now where, as you said, we continue to go through more and more and more, so much that we don't even have a chance to process
Mm-mm.
all of it or even acknowledge something else that has occurred because we're still trying to be in what happened before.
Yeah.
We've got to redefine our definition of balance and our
Mhm.
expectation of balance.
Mhm.
And we also have to give ourselves permission to put down stuff when it's really heavy or hard. We have to redefine how we are moving through life and what our expectations are of ourselves, of each other. Um, and also, a skill development needs to happen in terms of grace and compassion for
Yeah.
ourselves and for one another.
Yeah.
Because again, in American culture, we're not taught that. We are taught discipline and willpower and all that other stuff, which is important. Yes, success is important. Yes, making money is important, all the things, but we also are humans. And I think that is a big reason why a lot of people are struggling, like deeply struggling, because they're equating almost how they are, the heaviness that they're feeling or the uncertainty they're feeling with their own success
Yes.
and ability to move through life.
Yes.
And that math doesn't quite math.
No. Hearing you say all of this, like even as you're talking about balance, I feel like, well, there's two things. I mean, one thing is, I think the concept of balance is just in itself confused. I think for all of us, and but speaking specifically to self-employed people, it's like the expectation that you have your life and then you have your work and like that those are two things on opposite sides of a scale is a joke.
Or a clear boundary between
Right.
them.
Of course not. not how it works. Everything that happens to you in your life affects how you show up to your work. And for most of us, we're thinking about our work all the time. And we're bringing things from our life into our work, you know? But the other piece of this is, and I hope that I want to say this as like a way of sort of grounding this whole conversation and why this is not just another conversation about the basics of self-care that you think you already understand. The reason I want to have this conversation is because the way that as people who are doing meaningful work in the world and creating our own work in the world and who want to stay aligned with our values and build something that challenges systems rather than continues to perpetuate the same thing that we're seeing. Most of the people who are listening to my show are people who want to create some kind of difference through the work that they're creating. You are not going to be able to do that if the way that you are dealing with challenging times is to disconnect from yourself, from your body, from reality in order to push through your work. Like you're literally disconnecting yourself from the place where your values live, from the place where your curiosity lives. Like you are getting further away. Our pursuit to be more productive at a time like this takes us further away from the kind of difference that we want to make or the kind of work that we really want to be bringing to life. And so listen to us, people. Listen, because I know it's always the stuff that's like it sounds so basic that people want to like skip over and get to the other stuff. And what we're saying is like, no, stop doing that and come back to yourself in this moment and understand what you're actually going through and some things that you could be doing for yourself that will be a lot more productive in the sense of the term that we're interested in here.
A case for basic self-care is that, you know, the more dire things are, right? The worse things feel.
Yes.
We need to again, redefine, learn, unlearn, relearn what we perceive as self-care or enough, right? Or what is going to be significant, right? And so I always say to clients, like the bigger life is, the smaller and more basic the self-care practice needs to be, because there's just not enough space for big on both sides. And then what happens is oftentimes our big self-care is the flashy stuff, the stuff that costs a lot of money, the stuff that also costs us a lot of time, that requires a huge ass amount of support or space. And we don't have that.
Yeah.
And
like,
so
you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and get a membership to this yoga studio and I'm going to start going to 5 yoga classes a week. And I'm going to like invest in this and be serious about it. And it's like,
right. Yeah. Or thinking that, and here's the thing, like, no way am I poo-pooing that. Yeah, like, yes, move your body, right? Or take the vacation if you are resourced to and privileged enough to be able to do that, whatever it is. But the reality is that also takes work, time, energy, money, right? And you may not be resourced to do that. And also, does it fix everything, or is the impact really going to be enough? Because in the times we're living in, you know, basic has never been insignificant. Basic has always been significant. We have just taken the meaning away and given it to something else. Because again, in American culture, if something costs more or more time is involved, then to us, that means it's more valuable. And so we have to redefine what we view as valuable.
I just have to say, like, what you're talking about, Steff, for everybody listening, please understand that part of what Steff is saying is that you are setting yourself up for this feeling of, why can I never follow through on the things that I say I'm going to do for myself? Because that's another place where we start to judge ourselves. Well, the reason that you can't follow through on it is because your expectation of yourself, of what you're going to put into your self-care practices, are way too fucking high considering what you're going through.
Exactly. Yes. And then the other thing that I wanted to say too, and this was actually a conversation I just had this morning with my best friend on kind of an epiphany that I had this morning, was as I was, you know, of course, berating myself for how tired I am.
Yep.
Right. Because
Yep.
because that helps and that's fair. I realized I was like, it's November, and I reflected a bit yesterday on some of the hard things I did this week. Hard things around money and planning and hard conversations about things. And also I'm a big reflector, and I reflected on, wow, we are in, month 11 now of 12, if we're following, the calendar. And as I look back, I'm like, shit, I've been doing hard stuff. This whole year has been, my focus has been doing some really hard things. And every single week, having hard conversations or doing uncomfortable things. No wonder why I'm exhausted on top of everything else. And what I realized and what I was able to name in words was to avoid things, whether it's hard emotions or hard experiences or hard conversations or hard, considerations. That takes energy. It does, absolutely, 100%. But to actually show up and face it, to be in it, requires even more energy, because the doing of it is hard, and the being in it is hard. And the soothing of yourself is hard. And that's why we avoid, because we know what that takes. Like it's hard. It's uncomfortable. It's vulnerable.
Yeah. It's like
But
Sled says, like, anything that like anytime that we're faced with change, we both want it and don't want it.
exactly. Exactly. And so, we keep wanting change. We keep wanting things to be different, but we're unwilling because it's a vicious cycle, right? Because if you don't have the support, if you don't have the space, if you don't have the time, if you don't have the resources, right, to support you through this, yes, of course you're going to bottle things up and you're going to avoid things and you're just going to push it away, of course. But then that's when this just continues to go on for a longer time, and also feels even bigger and more impossible and awful. And so when you were saying, like trying not to avoid things, not trying to push through all the time, like we've got to be in the hard. We've got to be in the tough stuff. We've got to be in the horrific stuff. We've got to be in all of it, because that's the only way through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was listening to a podcast episode this morning with this behavioral economist who was talking about what we understand about why people buy into conspiracy theories, and the actual psychology and the sociology that and the science that's been done about this to understand the ways that our brain works. And that we need to understand that when people are, he was talking about how it kind of is like a vicious cycle, because people are more likely to buy into something like this when they have been alienated. So if you feel like you are really being pushed aside, marginalized, left behind, people think that you don't matter, whatever, it's like you're going to look to how to make sense of that. And like when you're more stressed, your brain starts looking for patterns more. So like apparently they have literally looked at people who they land from skydiving, and they show them an image, and it's like a bunch of like dots on a piece of paper, and they just like immediately can see a bunch of patterns, where when their nervous system is totally calm, they don't see any patterns. Like it's an evolutionary thing that we start looking for it when we're really stressed. Anyways, the point is, he was talking about how anytime that you're stressed, you're going to go back to mental shortcuts, right? So you're going to go back to, in this instant, like your brain is going to try to save capacity. It's like you're running out of RAM, And so the only way for your brain to deal with it is to just go back to all of these mental shortcuts that you've created for yourself to try to get out of it, because it's the only thing you have the capacity for. And so when I'm hearing you say all this, I'm hearing, yeah, of course, when our capacity is diminished because of everything that we're going through, facing all of it is going to feel nearly impossible. And so what are we going to do? We are going to try to escape it by going back to those cultural narratives that we talked about in the beginning of this, that most of our parents taught us, that it's like, yeah, I know you don't want to, and you have to, because this is the way that the world works. Get your shit together and go and do the thing. Why are you laying down still? It's 11 o'clock. Why are you still sleeping? You know what I mean? Like, I know I'm not the only one who still hears my parents being like, why are you laying down? You know what I mean? So of course we're going to go back to those shortcuts. And of course, we're going to try to escape the thing that's going to require so much more capacity because we don't have the capacity. So then I hear you, Steff, saying we have to be able to set things down. And the connection that I make, and I would love to hear if this is kind of what you mean by this, or if this is just what my brain does and I start putting things together. But then I hear, okay, so we have two choices. We can continue to do what we've been doing, which is to try to escape this feeling by achieving our way through it, pushing our way through it, organizing our way through it, berating ourselves for being tired, making ourselves wrong for it, so that we can try to create a different situation where in our minds, everything's going to be different and we're finally going to have things together and we're not going to feel this way anymore. Or what if we said, okay, I'm doing this because my capacity is really limited. I know that the way out of this is to actually face and deal with this stuff. So what am I going to be intentional about setting down so that I have the capacity to do that? Great. I get it now. Thank you, Steff.
Well, because I think also, I mean, like, I mean, I know for me and maybe other people, but there's this feeling that we have to keep carrying everything.
Oh, of course.
And that everything has to be important. And we all have so many priorities, so many responsibilities, so many things that we've been told we need to do, or we have decided we need to do, that it's just too much. We just cannot, under not horrific circumstances, we all had too much on our plate anyway.
Right.
And we saw that, when things shut down with COVID, and we saw like, holy shit, there was way too much that I was responsible for, that I was trying to do. And it just is too much. And so I think we need to get more comfortable with saying, no, I cannot do that. And deciding what truly the priority is, because the reality is we cannot show up to as many priorities as we are trying to, or the way that we are trying to show up to them.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to get comfortable in that. Like when I say put something down, it's like, okay, well, either I don't have the capacity to deal with this right now, emotionally or mentally. So that's going to have to pause because this other thing needs my attention. Or I know I wanted to do this today. It is, not time sensitive, right? Somebody may be sad or disappointed, right? But the world is not going to end. Shit's not going to hit the fan. I'm just not going to do it. And have that decision not be tied to you didn't do enough, or you are not amazing enough, right? Because you had to say no, or decide not to do something.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And the second thing, I think that too is we're living in a pressure cooker. At least I feel like that. We're like, or maybe for everybody, it's a different feeling, but I feel like it's just, I'm in this vessel and the pressure just keeps getting turned up and turned up and turned up. And all I want is to reduce or release the pressure.
Yeah.
And sometimes I know for me, it feels like if I do that, then everything's going to explode.
Yes.
Or implode. I guess depending.
Yeah.
Right. And so then it's like, then I'm like, okay, then I just got to get comfortable in this because everything can't explode. Right. There's not enough space to put it all back together. Like I just don't have the capacity to deal with it if it does do that. And so something that I've really been turning to, and that in my own life, but is really the foundation of the work that I do with clients, is come back to the basics. So can we give some love to eating? Because it's when we get stressed and when we're overwhelmed that the basic things fall off.
Yes.
Because they probably weren't all that set anyway, because I mean, the reality is we don't have enough space and time to take, the care of ourselves that we wish we could. Right.
Yeah.
And so there are 4 things that I'm always like, okay, can you just do these things? Try to
great.
Do these things.
I was going to say, so what needs our attention? Like if because I know people are going to have so many things to say about like, but I can't put anything down. Right.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to underscore what you said about when you feel like you're in this pressure cooker. And what I'm hearing you say is like, when you need to release the pressure the most is when it's going to feel the most impossible. Like,
yes.
Right. So when you really, really need to do this, it's going to be at the time when your brain is going to be telling you you couldn't possibly. And what I would love to just underline there is anytime that you are making up a story about how if you simply set something down, if you simply give yourself some space, if you simply take care of yourself, your whole business is going to fall apart, or all of your clients are going to leave, or you're never going to achieve the thing that is an outsized, that is you jumping to a pretty major conclusion, which is a pretty good sign of the fact that you're probably really tired and doing one of those mental shortcut things. Like it's almost like you're triggered because you're so activated. I don't know how that shit works. You know better than I do. But anyways, that's a good indicator that like now's the time to do this audit. So I would love for you to share like what are the 4 things to come back to that we could maybe together, if you're listening, maybe you like really pay extra close attention right now as Steff is talking, and you just ask yourself, like, are these 4 things, how could you take better care of these 4 things?
Yeah. And I want to be very clear before I continue is that we've got to let go of perfection.
Yes.
We've got to let go of like what this needs to look like. Right. And so like the first thing is eat, like, and I understand that is a really, really hard topic for many people for many reasons, including food insecurity, of course, eating disorders, the way that dominant culture views food and demonizes food and healthifies or puts food on a pedestal. So many people are walking around with really hard relationships with food and with eating, and whether it's cultural, beyond American culture, and it's to, whatever culture it is that their family origin has, like, it's so hard. And so much of it is given to us, right? From others. And so I want to acknowledge that. So please take this with a grain of salt if this is something that's very, very emotional, flammable for you. But eat, because there are a lot of people who when they get stressed, they just don't eat. And I'm not going to tell you what to eat. Just
Thank
eat,
you.
please.
I was having a conversation with a good friend recently. And I said, it was like in the morning, I think. And I was going on about, I just feel like if this happens, then this is going to happen. And then this is going to happen. And then I'm just never going to blah, 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 blah. And I was just like totally venting like all of my fears and stuff. And then I ended up eating something after that. And then I texted them and I said, it turns out I just needed to eat a piece of bread. It's like, arms. I think it's going to be okay now.
Yes, sometimes, yes, that's all we needed, right? And I mean, like, you think about it, and I don't mean to take away from the human experience or the adult experience, but I always think back, in the moments that I have that kind of clarity, and it's like, oh, so like, what does a tantrum look like from my child? What about when your animal is like acting out? Right? They're so basic.
Yeah.
Animals and kids, right? Like, obviously their emotions are complex, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But so much of dysregulation when we're seeing it comes back to like, have you had enough water? Have you eaten? Do you need a hug? Right? Do you need to go to the bathroom?
Yes.
Oh, and I'm not making fun at all. I'm just like, I don't know why we feel like we as adults who have competing priorities and we have so much shit on our plate, like, that we don't need these things.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why is it okay for your dog to have all those things or your child to have all those things, but you think that you don't need that?
Yeah.
Right. And how then can you come to your business? How can you come to these things, your clients and all these people and things that need you, these decisions, without that?
Yeah.
Right. We view basic as in like insignificant, but it's not. So eat.
It's the
drink
most
water,
significant.
Right? It is the most significant.
You can't do anything if you're not nourished. Yeah.
Right. It's true. And nourished in different ways, right? Like drink your water, drink your tea. I mean, if you're having caffeine, I encourage you to like maybe limit it past 10 a.m. because, it does take quite a while for caffeine to get through our system.
Mhm.
And so I know that's really hard for some people, but the reality is like if we're leaning on if you keep normal hours in terms of like you're up somewhere between like 6 and 8 a.m. and you're up in bed, I don't know, sleeping by like midnight or so. If you're keeping that type of hours, you're not working overnight per se, or some reason why you're up overnight all the time, like allow that the caffeine to come out of your system so that you have the best chance
Yeah.
at getting to sleep. And the reality is if within that schedule you're needing the caffeine in the afternoon, that's an indicator that something else has got to change. And I know
Yeah.
that's hard,
Yeah.
right? That is hard. It's really hard. And because we know so many people who are having that afternoon cup of coffee, it's like it's become normalized, right?
Mhm.
Because again, American culture, the hustle and the grind. How do we get through it?
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
But hydrate. I mean, we do a good job of discounting how important that is. And we think, oh, well, I'm working out, so I need to drink more water or whatever. No, no, no. Like everybody, whether you're moving your body or not, like please keep yourself hydrated. Like when you water your plants, make sure you remind yourself that you need to drink some
You could do what
water.
I do
Fill the
and just
dog bowl, right? Like all
carry
the things.
around an emotional support water bottle all the time.
Yes.
Everyone knows I
Yes.
got this white hydro flask. It comes with me everywhere. Everywhere.
Everywhere. Do it. Do it. Do it. And then, the third thing is move your body. Again, exercise is also very complicated for people. That's why I typically don't use that word, but move your body.
Yeah.
Um, you know, do whatever feels good, whatever you like, right? Like dominant culture has all the, guidelines and stuff, fine, but do what you like. Do
Yeah.
what's going to feel good. And if today your hard ass cardio workout or your hard ass strength training workout is not it, then do something else. And that is going to be met with a lot of like, oh, that doesn't feel good. And I know that because I have been there and I'm in the process of healing my relationship with exercise after being in this industry for so many years, right? But we have to do what feels good, and we cannot guilt and should and shame ourselves and judge ourselves for a workout we didn't do or we didn't go the way we wanted it to or whatever else it is.
Mhm.
Move your body. And if what you need to do is kind of beat yourself up a little bit through a workout, I understand that. And sometimes we do need that. But there come a point where like that's just not it.
Yeah.
And doing it for the sake of doing it because that's what dominant culture says, or that's what whoever says, or whoever is doing it. No, just
Mhm.
in these times, just freaking move your body. Whether that's a walk, whether that is gently stretching, whether that is rolling around on the ground like your favorite animal. Like, I don't care. Just move
Yeah.
your body,
Yeah.
please. And sometimes just doing that, whether it's dancing around to your favorite song, right? Like, it
Yes.
doesn't matter. You could twerk it out. Like, imagine you're in the club whenever you were at the height of doing the club. And if that's you now as an adult, please take me with you, right? But like, do it.
Yeah.
Like just do it. And then back to sleep. Like, I know it's really hard because when you're dealing with a lot of emotional and mental stuff, sleep gets interrupted so much, but also sleep gets interrupted or messed with because of the way we're going through the day. Sleep is not only or solely impacted by our caffeine or by the stuff that we're carrying around. It's also by the pace of our day and how much discomfort we're holding. And so these simple things of eating and drinking water, nourishing the body so it can be a little bit more soothed, but
Mhm.
allowing yourself to move to create space for some of these very basic practices that normally we may just omit altogether, that is going to nourish our sleep. And so trying to maybe fall asleep and wake up at the same time, each day or most days, just trying to come back, just like, whoever it is that you care for, even plants out in nature. I mean, there's a sleep cycle to things
Mhm.
every day.
Yeah. One of the things that I tell clients often who are like you, Steff, like really focusing on doing some really hard things, is part of what you're trying to do is you're trying to build new habits and like build new patterns and stuff. And what we know is that neuroplasticity, which is what we are trying to take advantage of when we do that, that works when you're sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
Like your
Yep.
brain is what we know about neuroplasticity and the way that your brain literally changes shape as you do new things, right? So we face challenges, we go through the hard parts, we try new things. Eventually, those things become second nature. They become second nature because your brain literally changes shape. And that happens when you're sleeping. So I am saying this just because I know that there are people who listen to this who are like hardcore, like, I don't want to do all of this, but tell me the business case, Brooke. That's what they want. They want the business case. The business case is none of the shit that you're learning how to do from any of the programs that you're in or any of the people that you're following or any of the things that you're doing daily or weekly or whatever to build new habits. It's not going to stick if you're not sleeping. You would be better off setting down, if we're talking about what you're going to set down the creation of new habits in your business and prioritize the creation of better sleep habits. As your business coach, this is my advice.
It's so true. I mean, there's so much that happens during sleep, including that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking cell regeneration. We're talking about digestion, and when we think about digestion, we're always thinking about, okay, well, how is my gut, right? How is digestion going? Or is food agreeing with me, right? Like, how do I feel after I eat, etc. Like, what is my energy like after I eat? All those things, right? That's what we associate digestion with. But there's also digestion that's happening overnight that can only happen when we're sleeping. Cell regeneration can only happen when we're sleeping. There are hormones that we need that are only secreted when we're sleeping.
Yeah.
And so if for those of you who want to be more productive, for those of you who want to be more organized and more efficient and just fucking crushing life right now, sleep.
Sleep. Yeah, totally. One of the things that I'm recognizing as we're talking about this, because again, I talk to clients sometimes about sleep. I mean, oftentimes it will be like someone will come to me and be like, there is this massive problem that we need to fix. I am in serious trouble. I'm in serious trouble. Everything is going downhill. This is bad, bad, bad. Help me, help. And I usually will start with like, how are you sleeping and what's going, like basic stuff, because I'm like, if these basic things are not met, I don't even want to have a conversation about this, because the reality is you're actually just tired and like burnt out. And we're going to go down this whole rabbit hole of chasing this thing that actually, if you took a nap, then like in 2 hours, you'd be like, actually, maybe it's not that bad, but what I get from people a lot, it's so funny because it's the same thing as what happens with the business strategy stuff. When we talk about basic things, so great example, know who your ideal client is. This is like, everyone talks about knowing who your ideal client is. Guess what? There's a reason why everyone talks about it. And it's because you need to know who your fucking ideal client is. I'm sorry. I am sorry. Don't come for me. I'm just telling you, this is what we know. So you can either be like, but it's so hard. What else can I do? Or you can spend some time trying to figure out why you might not be able to get clear on this. Your time would be better spent slowing down, and instead of like rushing past knowing who your ideal client is to do the other things to try to find a way out of it because it's so hard for you, slow down and figure out why it might be hard for you, why you keep trying to do 1.5 million other things to avoid this one thing that almost everyone agrees is so important and basic. The same thing happens when I talk to people about things like these basic, these like basic self-care things, is it's just like, I know, but it's so hard for me. And so what else can I do?
Exactly. And if you find yourself there,
yes,
I have 4 other things.
Great.
But they're not. And so maybe it's like more accessible. I don't know. Right.
Maybe.
Because here's the thing.
Or maybe it's like, instead of constantly looking for the other thing, you actually like take a beat and be like, I keep skipping over these, and that's why I keep finding myself here. But tell us the 4 other things.
Exactly. Yes. And so I want to say, because, like the 4 things that I need to eat, hydrate, move your body, sleep. I mean, these are things that literally the body needs. Like your body needs this. There is no other way.
Yes.
Period. However, there are other things too that you could maybe use as your gateway. Maybe these feel a little bit easier.
Great.
Right. And so one, if you are safe to do so, connect with nature. You
Mm.
could look outside a window if you have access to one. If you work in a building where your office does not have a um a window, then maybe moving at some point in the day just to be able to see outside. If you are safe to go outside for a little while. And I'm not talking about some meadow full of flowers. If you are on concrete, go outside and stand on the damn concrete with your shoes on, right? Like it doesn't have to be pretty,
Yeah.
but as long as you're safe, right? Like, so, because we often think like it's got to be this picturesque thing. I mean, great if it is, but it doesn't have to be. But just to get fresh air or at least feel the sun on your face, especially if you're heading into, um, you know, the time of being cold and like, sunlight is waning, like connect with nature. There is so much research out there that shows the benefit of being outside in nature.
Mm.
Bonus if you can hear some, birds and things like that happening.
Yeah.
Right. So allowing ourselves, because you were talking about getting clarity. Let me tell you, I mean, there's a lot of clarity that comes from taking that pause to look outside or be outside, that then all of a sudden this answer you were searching for the last 4 hours comes to you. You can problem solve. You have flexibility within your mind now. So for those of you who are really in the thick of productivity or the thick of problem solving, get outside for a little while.
Yeah.
And that will change things for you.
Yeah.
That leads to another thing of pausing throughout the day. And this is very hard for a lot of people because time is of the essence, right? We are strapped for time. And that could be literally pausing between emails. It could be doing something for self-love, could be eating, it could be drinking water, it could be the things we just talked about, right? Keep it short and simple. It could be using the bathroom when you have to go to the bathroom and not waiting.
Yeah.
Right? Not putting that kind of stress on your body because your body's going through enough stress. To breathe, to exhale when you feel like I cannot even take a deep breath because everything will come unraveled, right? Breathe just a little bit. Check in just to see what's present, right? Like when you have, I don't know if it happens to, to you, Brooke, or anybody who's listening, but when you've got that loop, whatever the loop is on your mind that just continues going on and on and on and on and on and will not stop. Sometimes when we just pause and we do a check-in, that slows the loop down or it quiets the voice a little bit, like lessens the volume, or, you can call bullshit on it, right? Like, so sometimes it just stops things a little bit and it's like a reset button. And so taking those pauses, but keep it super short and keep it super simple. And if you've got to put it into your calendar, put it into your calendar. That's what I started doing.
Lunch break. Hi, everybody. Yeah.
Put the break in. Absolutely. And then the last two, meaningful connections, right? Of your choosing. Choose who you are spending your time with. Obviously, there are some things that are out of our control, but maybe we can shift if we can't altogether not see someone, maybe we could shift how we are in contact with them, how much space and time. I don't know. I mean, we can be very flexible with this. And get comfortable with saying no. I mean, this time of year, I don't know when this is going to air, but we are forced to sometimes be with people we don't want to be with, right? And we have to say yes to obligations with holidays and all the things and gatherings. You can say no, as long as hopefully there's not going to be any sort of repercussion. And if there is, maybe that's something you got to deal with too. But like, say no. And also in the same vein, say yes. Like if you want to say yes, but you're like, everything is telling me not to because of this and this and this. Oh my gosh. Say yes. Say yes to yourself. Say
how am
yes.
I supposed to make time?
Emphatically.
Yeah. Like how am I supposed to make time to just like go out with a friend when like I have all this stuff to do?
Yes. Say yes. Right. I mean, and I want you to begin to do this without guilt, without shame, without judgment. Like, and if you figure out after you make the decision that it was the wrong one, then change it for the next time. Right. Like that's the thing about life. Like you can decide the next time to say yes if you said no, or vice versa. You can decide again. Right. And then the last thing is me time. I cannot say this enough. Me time is so important. I know, right, dominant culture, when we say me time, you immediately possibly get the image in your head of the bubble bath, maybe with a glass of wine, water, whatever it is your thing, Netflix, I don't know, whatever your thing is, right? And these things are me time.
Yep.
But I want to be very clear about what I think me time is and what I need it to be for you, right? Is where you get to choose what the fuck you're doing.
I love that.
Period.
Yep.
Right? Number one. And alone time. Now I know alone time is hard for people because that's when like your mind is racing, like your mind is never so loud as when you are by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's hard, but we need it. Like we need time alone.
Mm-hmm.
If you are in a group, then you need to get to decide what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For instance, this morning I told my kids I feel like having pizza. Quincy, my little one, says, I don't want pizza. I want hamburgers. I said, that's fine, but I'm saying what I want. I want pizza, and that is significant, and that means something.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Whether you are a person who has children, whether you are a caregiver, whether you live with other people, whatever your life circumstances, I don't think enough of us really actively choose what we want to do.
Yeah.
Whether it's people pleasing. I mean, this can go back decades, right? For whatever it is, why we are the way we are and why we show up the way we show up. Right. But there's so much importance in you getting to choose what you want to do.
Yep.
And doing that thing.
Yep. Yeah.
And to hell with what anybody has to say with it.
My husband is out of town right now. And so I'm alone in my house. By the way, I'm alone in my house without a dog or a person for like days at a time for the first time in my entire life. I realized that
has to be a little disorienting.
It's very strange. Like it's very strange. But anyways, I was talking to a friend the last time that he was out of town, actually. And we were both saying, I was saying to them, they were like, how are you doing? And I was like, Jake's out of town. And so like, I'm just like doing whatever it is that I feel like at any moment. And it's so funny because you don't realize when Jake and I have been together since we were 13. We've lived together. We literally moved out of our parents' houses into an apartment together when we were 18. So I was like, it's so funny that like, you don't realize that even if you have a partner who you get along with really well and you love doing the same things, that every moment of the day, you're thinking that like, you're weighing what you want to do against what they might want to do or how you usually spend your time together. And I was like, and they were saying the same thing. They were like, yeah, I love my partner so much. And also I know exactly what you mean, that like when they're out of town, it's like, you don't even realize that there was some kind of mental load of constantly assessing what they might want or like what you usually do for each other. And like, oh, I have to do this thing because this is an agreement between the two of us, right? Like this is the thing that I do for us. And so I have to do it now because it's like my part of and there's this thing that happens where you're alone. That's just like, wait, I can just like go, like I can watch literally whatever I want and not even give a shit about whether or not you want to watch it or, whatever.
Yep.
My husband and I also had a conversation recently about how I oftentimes am walking around the house with AirPods in, listening to a podcast or something. And he's like, even when we're together, you're like listening to a podcast. And I'm like, listen, sometimes I'm not even listening to a podcast. I just have AirPods in to signal to you that this is my time, that I don't want anyone to talk to me. I'm doing something.
Yeah,
that's what it is. So I understand. And also like, we need to set some boundaries then or be intentional around what is quality us time and what is the time when no one has any demand on my time. Because
yes,
on days when I'm home, because I work from home, and on days when he works from home, which he sometimes does, I absolutely cannot function with the expectation that anytime you want to have a conversation, I'm just supposed to be available for it. Nope. Can't do it. I do not.
Yes.
And I don't have children.
And to your point, though, about like the mental conversation, the mental gymnastics you do, sometimes it's also like, I really want to do this thing, but what are they going to say about it?
Yes.
What's the fight going to be? Or I know for me as a parent, it's like, okay, well, how much am I going to have to get done ahead of time? Or what's the load going to be like afterward when I come back? And that's hard. That is really hard. And I'm not here to discount any of those things because that is real. At the same time, and this may be something that takes you some time to start doing, right? Because it may take a little bit of like wrapping your mind around it. But the reality is like doing things that bring you joy, doing things that bring you ease and comfort. And something I've been really, interrogating within myself is something that brings you soothing. These things are necessary.
Yeah.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
And so I find that the action of creating space for something I want to do, even if it's just for a few minutes, it does not have to be something big, right?
Mm-hmm.
The action of me saying no or yes, right? When it's aligned,
Mm-hmm.
that those three things in and of itself release that pressure for me.
Yeah.
It creates space
Yeah.
for me to do the thing that I'm shooting myself over in terms of work or
Yep.
the to-do list or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I know it doesn't seem, maybe like on first glance, it doesn't seem connected, but it
Mm-hmm.
really is. Because like you said earlier, every part of our life is interconnected, no matter how much we want to create boxes or boundaries around them. It's just not. And so we only have one gas tank that we're fueling ourselves with. That's the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And even just the mental conversations, forget the conversations we're having out in the world, but the conversations we have internally is taxing us. Just like you said, like that demand on your brain is so much. And the other thing that I also want to make sure to say is, we know self-care isn't selfish, but I also want to say that me time, those no's, those yeses, whenever you decide to eat, whenever you decide to drink some water, whenever you decide to sleep, or it's a different kind of rest, whenever you are making those meaningful connections, that is community care.
Mm.
So whoever you hold in your community, whatever work you're doing in the world, however you're showing up in the name and face, like in the face of injustice and in the name of justice, this is community care, period.
Thank you. We need that reminder. Steff, we could talk for the rest of the day.
We really could.
Sometimes we do talk most of the day on Voxer. Tell people where they can find you. I mean, in addition to, obviously, you're doing this workshop in December in Fruition, which we're going to tell people all about. But how about your work? Where should people find you? And if people are like, you know what, I need a little bit of Steff Gallante in my life. Like, where have you been my whole life? I got to get serious about this. Maybe instead of investing in a gym membership, right, we put some resources into actual care for yourself. Where should people do that?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Steff Gallante. That's STEFF Gallante. And also my website is steffgallante.com. And there you can click on work with me, and you'll find out all the information to, book a one-on-one call that we get to release the pressure a little bit.
Yeah.
For you.
So it starts with that for you. And then I know that you do have a community kind of space that you hold with some variety of self-care, space held for self-care practices, for movement, for checking in around these basics. But it all starts with just that one-on-one conversation with you. And
if podcasts is your thing, then also you can hear more about, all of my F-bombs and feelings about all the things that are wrong. Humaning the shit we need to talk about. So
humaning the shit we need to talk about. Find it wherever you're listening to this show. Steff, this was so fun and so needed, and I needed to hear it myself. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait for people to listen.
Thank you for having me. Always. I appreciate you.